Good evening. I hope one day someone tells me why I can't wait till 5:30. I don't know. I just happen to like 5:29. And put my little hallelujah light on. I love that. There we go. I want to, when I first started reading my book, I always spend a few minutes talking to you, all of you. When I first started, and the Lord told me to read my book, told you he wasn't clear about anything, just read it. And I was reading it and reading it and reading it. But as I continued in this book, I found that just reading it without an explanation uh, as to so many different parts of it didn't serve its purpose. And many of you have told me that what has drawn you to my story and my reading of my story is the personal touch. Anybody can just put themselves out there on social media and do something stupid, which is one of the reasons I feel very regal about social media. I think people make absolute fools of themselves. However, not to be judgmental, people could say reading my book is ridiculous. But I have found, though, that as I've continued in the reading process, taking out parts or being repetitious or being more in depth or elaborating on certain aspects that I felt would be more empowering to you has become extremely important for me to do. It's one thing to read a book. It's another to explain the interior of it. It's like you see the exterior of a person. But if you were to do a PET scan or an MRI or an ultrasound, what you would see inside is very different than what you would see on the outside. When I read my book, it's like this is the outside. But when I read it inside and I elaborate and really tell you why this part is so important, I want you to feel the guts of it. I want you to feel the journey. I want you to understand more about why I feel it is so important. When this book is done, I've told you I'm going to read my hospice book. I'm going to do the same thing then also, even if it takes longer. I'm going to tell you their story, and I will then tell you my part of it and how it worked into my life. But in that process, I will make this extremely personal and let you know exactly. Hi, Kim. I will tell you exactly why this is something you may go through or have to face. I also want to give one really big shout out to a young fellow from Morocco, Tangiers. I went there on our honeymoon, Jeff and I, and it's wonderful. It's just full of life and fun and streets. And it's just an amazing place. But from almost day one, this 38-year-old fellow named Jamal has tuned in to almost, I really mean every reading. And his comments might be, I don't understand English that well, or I don't read or really understand what you're saying, but he could feel what I was saying. And he would make comments. And he would say he could tell I was a good woman. He could tell I was a wonderful lady. He could feel me in Morocco. This 38-year-old fellow who just happened to tune in and liked what he heard, even if he didn't completely understand it at all. So Jamal, I want to say thank you. And if I knew how to pronounce your last name, I would, but I don't. So forgive me for that. But I am very grateful for you and the dozens and dozens and dozens of other people who have also been with me from the beginning. I started chapter 22 yesterday. No funny glasses today, David. We are back to normal. Well, I don't know if I'll ever be back to normal, but I know I'm back. We started chapter 22. We have 22, 23, and 24. And I do have my tissue. Keep one handy, folks, in case you get a little messed up during some of these readings now. If I can go through it, so can you. Hear that, Kim? If I can go through it, so can you. My dear little friend Kim, she had to pull over to the side of the road. She was so upset when she read part of it. Maybe too much information, but nobody really knows who you are. So, I started it, but now we're on July 11th, 1994. And this one paragraph I will read, and then I will continue into the new. In June, when we finally heard your doctor's words telling you that there was nothing else he could do, our first reactions of shock and disbelief gave way to panic and terror. The dreaded reality of this time had come, but I knew I couldn't accept it. It was too painful to believe you were going to die after you fought so long and so hard to live. I continued calling your doctors, frantically pleading with them to find one more drug, just one more treatment or procedure that could help you. I was begging them, quote, "Why can't any of you find something else that will work? Please do not let him die," end quote. But my pleas and prayers for help went unanswered this time. The doctors could not find anything else in their little black bags that would save your life. How could I deal with the horrible truth that your treatments weren't working any longer, and there's nothing left that anyone can do? It is impossible to explain the feelings of helplessness and hopelessness, and those two feelings are what you will experience in life no matter what your situation is. There will be times when you will feel helpless and hopeless, and the only way you're going to get through it, if you believe in God, then you lean on Him even more. If you don't, you better find something to believe in to get you through. If not, you are on a destruction. You're on a course to destruction for yourself, and that serves no one's purpose. I experienced it this time. I was petrified and I was terrified. I was helpless and I was hopeless. I have never felt this kind of desperation and futility before. I could not let you go, and I was not ready to say goodbye. I will tell you that to this day, almost 30 years later, I've still never felt that way. Through all the things I've been through or my own personal issues, I've never felt those things like that. I've never felt helpless. Hopeless. Petrified. Oh, maybe a little. Terrified. Yeah. But I have managed to stay true to the call of my life, and that is to speak a positive word to people, and now to take my story to the world. Here we're going to start now. This will be a lot of back up and forth. When you were diagnosed in 1992, the AIDS virus had only been discovered 10 years before. Many of you have never even experienced any of it. You don't know anyone who passed from it. You may not have anybody in your life who's HIV positive. We hope for that life-saving cure we heard just around the corner. And it's around the corner 30 years later. We were optimistic and encouraged because the government was releasing more revenues for research and development. Boy, I didn't think that one could relate any more than it does today. We were optimistic and encouraged because the government was releasing more revenues for research and development. I hope they release the funds for COVID in the fall. The insurance companies were going to make more alternative treatments accessible and affordable. But we were walking a fine line as we balanced our hope for a future with the deadly reality of time. We knew there weren't going to be any vaccines or cures coming along in the immediate future. There also weren't many long-term studies available. because most AIDS patients died shortly after they became ill or within a couple of years. Much of the documented medical information and clinical reports only reinforced the frightening facts we already knew. You are going to have to try many powerful drugs with potentially lethal effects and endure long, uncomfortable procedures throughout the course of this disease. We were taking a gamble on everything you tried, but we didn't have a choice. As soon as a drug or treatment was FDA approved, you had access to it. We focused on whatever we needed to do now in order to keep you alive, and we could continue to believe that you would never run out of options. It's interesting with COVID now how there's a parallel to that, not with just the funding, but how quickly vaccines were there and antivirals, and it's a different protocol. But you can imagine 30 years ago what it was like. HIV today is not the same. Here we are a little bit more into the backdrop. In June 1992, and for people, you're going to get caught up, when you entered the hospital with pneumonia, the doctors decided to put you on a drug that was proven to be highly successful in treating that strain of AIDS bacteria. I told you about this one early on. You were going to be in the hospital for an indefinite period of time and immediately started a 2-week, 4 times a day intravenous treatment. Your doctors believed you would come through this crisis because the clinical data and statistics supported their options. It was their words of encouragement and support that helped us remain positive during those 2 weeks. It wasn't the Bactrim. That was the one he had a violent reaction to, and I had to rush him back to the hospital. That little drug could have saved him, perhaps. Your doctors believed you would come through this crisis because the clinical data and statistics supported their opinions. It was their words of encouragement and support that helped us remain positive during those 2 weeks. After you completed the recommended course of treatment, the pneumonia was gone, and you were well enough to leave the hospital. But he had many different drugs that were being pumped into him. He had bronchial treatments. He was wired. He looked like the Bionic Man. You continued doing twice weekly inhalation treatments at home, though you suffered some terrible side effects from these treatments and had difficulty with several other medications. For 9 months, the pneumonia did not come back. This is what we called our honeymoon period with the disease. And during this time, we had hope about everything. We half-heartedly believed you might beat the odds. It's like when you have cancer, you're diagnosed with cancer, and you do with your treatments, and you're in remission. And you hope you're in remission for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. But again, no doctor is going to ever tell you 100%. But today's medicine is so much better, and it's just if you can get in with the insurance companies, you can get in with the doctor. The medications are out there, but will your insurance company pay? And will the doctors be around to do it? That's a whole different world. The most frustrating thing we dealt with during these 2 years was the fact that no matter how hard you tried, you never regained your strength or got back to the same level you were before you became ill. That's what happened. You were up here, and then the pneumonia brought you down here, and then you plateaued up, and you were okay, but you never got back up. With the pneumonia, you were never the same as you were before you became ill. When the pneumonia did come back 9 months later, we were devastated. This was the worst setback we had experienced so far. You re-entered the hospital for another 2-week course of intravenous antibiotics, but your immune system was weaker than before the first bout. and the treatments had taken a terrible toll on your health in general. When you came home this time, it was even more difficult for you to put the weight back on, and you had much less energy. Remember, people, if you've gone with me through this journey, you know what's going on. You've been with me. You know the story. You know how some of it, you all have read this with me. When you came home this time, it was even more difficult for you to put the weight back on, and you had much less energy. Our doctor said the home inhalation treatments weren't going to work any longer. He put you on several newly approved AIDS medications, but you couldn't tolerate their side effects. However, we still continued to believe something else could be done. When the pneumonia came back for the third time in January 1994, even the hospital intravenous treatments were not effective. Your oral medications would not prevent recurrent infections, and the massive amounts of antiviral drugs you were taking to boost your immune system weren't helping either. Yeah, I'm going to do a little more. So the issue is to try to always catch, I'm so proactive with health for my own body, and I always have been in the medical field, but it's so important to be proactive. You have to fight for your health. They're not going to call you back all the time with your results. They're not going to schedule you properly for your tests. They're not going to. Doctors mean well, but the system is so against, unless you have the money, the resources, the education. I mean, it's a shame that so many people don't have the means and the availability or the ability to get the proper care, and we know what we're talking about. And don't please get me started on that. So here I had the best. We had everything, but it was the timing. It was timing. The timing was not good to have AIDS and to be immediately very, very sick early on. But the healthcare system is padded against you, and you better fight. Anybody watching this now, you better stay on top of it. You continue to call. You be a pest. And don't worry that your doctor might not like you, or the girl at the other end of the phone might not want to take your call. That's too bad. You fight for your rights to have health care. How's that for preaching to the choir? One more time. We're good. Here we go. Your white blood cell count was critically low, causing you to become highly susceptible to dozens of life-threatening infections. Your hemoglobin, and I went through the blood work, up and down, up and down. I was hysterical when nothing was ever normal. When you looked for something that was in the normal range, I mean, you went out and celebrated. Well, we didn't go out and celebrate. We were just happy. Your white blood cell count was critically low, causing you to become highly susceptible to dozens of life-threatening infections. Your hemoglobin and red blood cell counts had been nearly destroyed by the disease and the medications, and you had to go into the hospital for a series of blood transfusions. You went in, oh boy, do I remember this. You went in at 9 a.m., and when I brought you home at 4 p.m., you developed a case of hiccups that lasted for the 6 final weeks. Nothing. Imagine hiccups for 6 weeks over a blood transfusion. Nothing you tried would get rid of them. You were given protein injections 3 times a week and several other newly released antibiotics. You were doing Chinese herbs, juicing, acupuncture, ozone therapy, meditation, and megavitamin injections. We did still continue to believe there would be something else for us to try, but your time was running out, and you were getting weaker and weaker. The hiccups were exhausting. If anybody's ever had hiccups, even for a few minutes, they're exhausting. And here we're talking about a man who was so ill and tired already. That was just awful. I mean, the things we did to try to get rid of them, the drugs we did, Mm-mm. You were terrified because you were running out of options. There was a sense of urgency and panic setting in that we had never experienced before. This was the oppressing and overpowering realization that you were going to die. How's that? When you finally realize there is nothing else that can be done for real, that was the gut wrencher. And after a year that I took off and went up to see the folks and was with my parents, boy, I did well. Didn't need the old tissue. When I went up and spent time with my parents, I took a year off and went through the hospice training. And it was there as an 11th hour volunteer and stayed there so much. I mean, I logged more hours than any other volunteer the first year because I found so much peace there because I was able to relate to so many of the issues people were going through. People don't go to hospice to die. People go to hospice because they made a choice, or they couldn't be taken care of at home, or some went for pain medication. Their pain management protocol was different. But there were people that knew that their loved one might only have a little longer to live, as is in my case. And it was amazing, even to this day, to be able to relate to people. And people will talk to me. They come up to me. People who've known me for years through HIV, through the health department, through a lot of things I've done. They know me. They call me. They talk to me. They stop me. And they ask me about this. A lot of things. And I share. I'm no doctor, but I have a lot of valuable information. The other thing is, I will tell you, please go to SusanMintz.com. You can look at photos of Jeff and myself. The information about me is down there. Under the books page, you can read a whole lot of stuff, the short story version of this, and the readings. We'll be updating all the readings once I'm done with the book. And you can go to not only my website, but you can go to my YouTube channel. I do think somebody went. And I don't think it was me. There's more information about HIV and the monoclonal antibody treatments. But people, just hunker down for the next few months and try to enjoy the summer. Because in my spirit, I feel the fall is going to be very challenging. And I'm usually right. Unfortunately, I'm usually right. I will say that I'm grateful, I am blessed, and I am very happy that some of you have continued to stay with me. And I appreciate it. Your comments are welcome. Your messages are private. Most of you message me, but I also check your profiles out because I even now, with a couple hundred people, I know who's new. And I will check your profile out and message you. If I haven't, feel free to say something to me. But I'm pretty good about remembering something about you. So again, I'm going to say thank you and shalom, hello, shalom, goodbye, and shalom, peace. Please share. This is working because you're sharing. I didn't go from 14 views to 15 views to 18 views to 24 to 36 to 80, 85, 115 on some. I tell you, 150. I didn't go this way because I stopped. I'm going to keep increasing because you're going to want to know more. Whether it's this book, the next one, or I continue back on this one and I elaborate and just talk. You're going to want more. So be kind, be patient, and call someone and tell them you care. I kept saying tell them you love them. Maybe you don't have anybody in your world you really love, and don't lie. God will know if you're lying. Don't lie. But you can call someone and tell them I'm just thinking of you. Thank you, Kim. I enjoy my reading so much. God bless you too. All right, folks, I got to hit the big finish button, and that's it. So long and shalom for now. Bye.